Hey guys, I just got back from a Tuesday night local. I ended up in top 8 with Flunder once again. I know one of these days I'll have a different video or a deck profile to do other than Flunder, but it's just one of my favorite decks of the format. I like to keep a progress report essentially on it, and you can see the changes throughout the builds I've been making over the last couple of weeks. But basically, I went undefeated. My round one was against the Fish OTK deck. Round two, or not the Fish OTK, the fish deck that ends on like totally awesome multiple times. My round two was against Plunder Patrol, so that's a very favorable matchup for my deck. It was just very unfortunate my opponent got played against me. Round three, I played against Kashtira. Round four, I played against Sprite. And round five, I played against the Mirror. I unfortunately lost my top 8 match, though, to Therion ABC. My opponent did win the die roll. He ended up having skill drain because he main boards that card. So I lost game one for that reason. Game two, I made a minor misplay, but was able to play around his board for the most part. Game three, he opted to go first to set a monster. I try to activate Prosperity and add. He draws that. I try to play again my following turn. He draws again. And I was not unable to win that game due to the double draw and Lockbird. I get just general thoughts. I'd like to update maybe the sideboard to deal with draw a little bit better. It's just you have very limited options due to the Flunder mechanics and Call by the Grave being one. There are options that you can play, but it requires rearranging the sideboard a lot, and I'm not sure I'm willing to do that for this deck at the moment. But for the list, we got 3 Eaglin, 3 Urbina, 1 Stree, 1 Toucan, 3 Samorg, 3 M-Pen, 1 Ryza, 1 Apex, 3 Prosperity, 3 Duality, 3 Map, 3 Adventure, 2 Book of Moon, 1 Duster, 1 Unexplored Winds, 1 Elbors. For the Trouts, we got 3 Featherstorm, 3 Imperm, 1 Dreaming Town. For the sideboard is triple Nib, triple Dark Ruler, triple Evenly, 2 Ash, Unexplored, double Cosmic, Call By. For the extra deck, you have double Zeus, Lyrilisk Assembled, Kikin Fucho, 1 Downward, 1 Gustav Max, 1 Excidon Knight, 1 Blossom, 1 Unicorn, 1 Anima, 1 Underworld Goddess, 1 Wind, 1 Cerebus, 1 Omen, 1 Talker. So, Kashtira is slowly starting to see less play a little bit because of how fragile the deck is by doing the full zone lock. That's part of the reason why I personally don't opt to play Book of Eclipse. But I've come to the conclusion with the Flunder deck is that you kind of have to commit this deck to playing to go first, because a lot more hand traps are starting to see play in the format. I need to have the deck built to deal with hand trap. You need to prioritize hand traps over the Kashtira boards right now. And you kind of just accept the fact that, like, if your opponent's playing the Kashtira deck and they choose the zone lock route, it is what it is. But I've seen especially a lot of players at my locals starting to go with safer routes to play around Nib. So that's why I feel more comfortable having less cards in the main board to deal with the Kashtira matchup, and just focus on dealing more with more generic hand traps like Ash, Veiler, and Imperm. Book of Moon is optimal for this deck, like very optimal, simply because not only it helps deal with breaking boards, it helps dodge hand traps. This basically dodges all the major hand traps except for Ash, and acts as a defensive card for this deck. So that's why I essentially took out my Nibs in the main board for Book of Moon, and I've really liked that choice so far. The only actual hand trap I'm currently playing is Imperm. And that's basically just to slow down my opponent enough to the point where I'm able to break my opponent's board. Like, I'm perfectly okay with just having Imperm as the only hand trap in my deck, because if I can still stop or slow down a key point of my opponent's strategy, this card will help me do that. We're always playing the auto win buttons. We want to max out on M-Pen because we are playing the Elbors package, and it gives us a higher chance of actually playing the game during our turn. For the sideboard, it should be pretty self-explanatory. Triple Nib. I was playing Ultimate Slayer up until very recently. I've been trying Dark Ruler over Ultimate Slayer, simply the fact I do expect to see more Sprite. And I seem to be correct on that end, especially since Sprites were in the finals of the last YCS. So Ultimate Slayer is a good card. However, it's only not highly effective. I can't really say it's not highly effective against Sprite, but Dark Ruler kind of just like guarantees you're able to play against the Sprite board most of the time, because they're going to end on multiple negates now rather than like one or two negates. So Dark Ruler is taking priority right now for Ultimate Slayer for that reason. Triple Evenly, Double Ash, 1 Unexplored, 1 Call By, and Double Cosmic. The extra deck did get changed up a little bit though, now that I'm not playing the Ultimate Slayer targets. So I had a little bit more room for link options. Ironically enough, Exciton Knight and Gustav Max both came up today. So you're probably wondering how you summon Gustav Max in this deck. Well, you actually summon Gustav Max by using 2 M-Pens as material. And this card can actually, when you already have 2 M-Pens established, and that's not enough for game, this card usually actually hits your opponent for the extra damage for game. But also, this is a pseudo time card as well. I actually was in the scenario today against Kashtira, where my opponent was up 1,000 life points, but I did have double M-Pen on board that I summoned on his turn. So when time was called during the main phase, I just overlaid 2 M-Pens for Gustav Max and burned my opponent for game. So that did come up. Exciton Knight actually came up for me against the ABC matchup. Just simply because I needed to run over one of his guys to set up a Zeus in defense, because I opened double Simorgh. Unfortunately, my opponent was actually playing Underworld Goddess, so I wasn't able to sit behind a Zeus during that matchup, but I am glad I was playing at least a rank 4 in my deck, because there's very rare scenarios where you do open up double Simorgh. And Exciton Knight is just the best generic like Link 4 that you can play that actually is somewhat effective. Overall, I still mostly enjoy playing this deck. There's just very weird scenarios I get put into when I play this deck. Like, I don't want to say like my opponent has everything, but at the same time, it's a little frustrating when your opponents are playing like Floodgate type cards that most like normal combo decks can usually play around. But unfortunately, because you are playing the Flunder deck, you're only really restricted to 2, or if you're lucky, maybe 3 summons a turn with Elbors. There's only so much you can really do, depending on what your hand is. So I definitely do see myself playing another deck in the future, because unfortunately, people at my locals do have started this intentionally sideboard against this matchup, because especially the not so better players seem not sure what to do, so they'll overside for this matchup. But it is what it is kind of thing. But I still like this deck, at least for the local level. It's a fun deck to play. It can definitely put people on tilt, but you know what? It's just a simple deck that's easy, fun, and easy to use. I still enjoy playing it, and let me know what you guys think in the comments. Be sure to subscribe when you can as well. See ya.